All right, I'm going to go over the 2.8 through 2.10 homework assignment dealing with product and quotient rule. This first page is just going to go over 4 products, nope, more, 2 pages, just products and quotients. All right, so it's really tricky at first getting down the product rule. Not that the product rule is really tricky or the quotient rule is really tricky, but honestly, a lot of students fail to see a product of 2 functions. That's kind of the tricky part. Or they forget that they have to use the product rule. They'll see e to the x and sine of x, and they'll do derivative and call it good. But yeah, that's not the case. So we have a product of 2 functions, the functions being e to the x, sine of x, okay? And, yeah, so find f prime. So f prime of x, if you guys remember the rule, it's you take the first times by the derivative of the second plus the derivative of the first times by the second, or vice versa, because addition and multiplication are both commutative, so the order in which that happens doesn't matter. So I usually do like the derivative of the first. So derivative of e to the x is e to the x times by sine of x plus the derivative of the first, which is e to the x, times by the derivative of sine of x, which would be cosine of x. So there you go. There you go. For 2. So find derivative of cosine of x times tangent of x. So we're going to do the first, cosine of x, times by the derivative of tangent, and the derivative of tangent is secant squared of x, plus the derivative of the first, which would actually be negative sine of x, times by the second. Now, for the sake of if there's multiple choice can often be simplified, the answers anyways. So if you know how to simplify trigonometric expressions, that will help you for multiple choice. So for example, secant squared of x is cosine squared 1 over cosine squared of x, and then tangent of x is sine of x over cosine of x, and then this becomes 1 over cosine of x, because a factor of cosine will cancel, and then minus, I don't know if at this point it's even worth doing anything. This is why this one might not be a good one to simplify. That's just going to be sine squared over cosine. There's a lot you can do. So I'm actually going to stop there because I don't see any point. Alright, for 3, we have x times by sine of x. So the derivative, dy dx, will be equal to the first times by the derivative of sine plus the derivative of x, which is 1, times by the second sine of x. So there you go. For 4. Alright, so we're going to find dy dx at pi thirds. So dy dx will be equal to, so we'll take sine of x, we'll multiply by the derivative of cosine, which is negative sine. So this will become negative, and then times by sine of x, plus the derivative of the first, which is cosine of x, times by the second cosine of x. And then that will be equal to negative sine squared of x, or you can write that as negative sine of x squared plus cosine squared of x, or you can just write that as cosine of x squared. So that's dy dx. But now we need to find dy dx at x equals pi thirds. So that's going to be equal to negative sine of pi thirds squared plus cosine of pi thirds squared. So let's think about the angle of pi thirds. So the angle of pi thirds would be an angle that is 60 degrees. So 60 degrees. And then if you make a triangle with the x-axis, you're going to end up with a 1, 2, root 3 triangle, all positive sides. So this is pi thirds. Sine of pi thirds would be equal to square root of 3 over 2. So negative square root of 3 over 2 squared plus, and then cosine of pi thirds, cosine would be 1/2. So plus 1/2 squared. So then that's going to be equal to negative 3 over 4 plus 1 over 4. So that's going to be equal to negative 2 over 4. That's equal to negative 1/2. All right, for 5, if f of x is equal to the natural log of x times cosine of x, find f prime. So we'll take the first, which is the natural log of x, times by the derivative of cosine of x, which is negative sine. So I'm going to make this negative out here, times by sine of x, and then plus the derivative of log of x, which is 1 over x, times by cosine of x. And that's good right there. For 6, okay, let's find dy dx. Dy dx is going to be equal to, so we're going to take the first function, which is x squared, times by the derivative of the second function. The derivative of the second function has 2 terms, so we're going to have to use the sum and difference rule. So we'll take the derivative of e to the x, which is e to the x, and the derivative of negative 1, which is 0. And then plus the derivative of the first function, which would be 2x, times by the second. So just e to the x minus 1. Okay. Okay, then we have 4 quotients. All right, so let's see. So we'll do f prime of x. So f prime. So the order of the quotient rule matters because it has subtraction and it has a quotient, and in both of those, the order matters. So it's not commutative. So we have to do low. If you guys remember the rhyme, low, natural log of x, times by the derivative of the top, so it's d high, which would be negative sine of x. So low d high minus high, which is cosine of x, d low, which would be 1 over x. So I'm just going to put it as cosine of x over x. All over, square the bottom, yeah, so the bottom squared, so natural log of x squared. In terms of simplifying, if you have a quotient right here, to simplify, you'd get a common denominator, so multiply top and bottom by x, and then you'd have a complex fraction, which you do a keep, change, and flip. But I'm not going to simplify, so. All right, for 8, f prime of x, so start with low, which would be 2x plus 3, times by the derivative of the top, which would be 3. I'm going to put that out here. So low d high minus high d low, which would be 2. And then square the bottom. Okay, you can definitely simplify this numerator right here without much problems. You can distribute that 3, so it'd be 6x plus 9. You can distribute that negative 2, which would be negative 6x plus 4 over 2x plus 3 squared. And then you can combine like terms in the numerator, so that'll be 3x plus 13, I guess. But, yeah, there you go. For 9, so find dy dx, the derivative. So we'll do low, which is x, times by the derivative of the natural log of x, which is 1 over x. So that would just become x over x, which would become 1. So low di minus high times the derivative of the bottom, which would just be 1. And then all over x squared. The only thing to really simplify there would just be 1 minus the natural log of x over x squared. For 10, so finding f prime of x, so we got low, d high, minus high, d low, square the bottom, which would just become e to the 2x, because e to the x squared would just become e to the 2x. So just so you guys know. Actually, you know what? Let's write it as e to the x squared. I am going to simplify this one a little bit because I can see that I can pull out a factor of e to the x. So e to the x, and then we'd have cosine of x minus sine of x all over e to the x squared, which one of these would cancel. So that's an easy simplifying part. So cosine of x minus sine of x over e to the x. All right, I'll do another video for the multiple choice.